What's up, Outer Circle? So here I am live at Team Rock. I've got Coach Says right here. He is going to give us some great skinny. Just in a few minutes, I've learned so much about coaching, about people, about leadership with just a few of his comments. So check this out. Listen to his mindset and listen to the stuff that he pays attention to when he's coaching other people. All right, Coach, so what kind of advice can you give us? What do you look for when you pay attention to a fighter?
The first thing that I look for, whether it's a fighter that I've worked with for a while or a guy just beginning, is his work ethic. Talent does nothing in terms of winning championships, does nothing in terms of success at the end of the day. It's the guys who has the work ethic through and through. That's the guy who is going to be your champion sooner or later.
And then what was the other thing you said? Work ethic. You said something before he even steps on the mat. You said there were a couple things that you look for.
His attitude toward training. And I was telling our desk person here, Alicia, one of the reasons I like her is because she brings a lot of energy into the training environment, and it becomes infectious and it permeates throughout the room, and everyone becomes drenched in it, and it's good energy, and that good energy leads to good work ethic. And then the next thing you know, everybody's performing at a higher level. So you have to create a dynamic in the room, a culture, so to speak, that everyone can feed off of and feel like they're part of being successful, because the job here is not to critique this guy for being different from me. My job is to find the things that he does well and help complement, the guys here in the gym. And that's what we try to strive for and do day in and day out.
Okay, last thing. Can you share that story of the fighter? What's up, Josh? Good to see you, bro. You don't have to give his name, or you can, whatever you want to do. But the fighter, when you noticed something about the way his shoes were.
Okay, so I had a fighter named Danaher Edwards, and we were fighting at Fight Lab. Shout out to Fight Lab. I'll be commentating for Fight Lab 58, March 17th. So Danaher was fighting for the 125 title, and his opponent, we had to go to the rules meeting. So I noticed that his opponent, his shoes were slanted. So anybody who runs, that when you wear your shoes out, they tend to go in one direction, whether you bear your weight to the back or to the sides or to the front. So I noticed that his shoes had the weight A-framed, and I thought, he has to load his weight side to side prior to moving forward. So Danaher and I had trained 6 weeks of in and out movement, going forward, going backwards. So at the last minute, I decided, let's go side to side and then forward, because I knew it would take him longer to load his weight up and then come forward and get into the ring, into the cage that night. And of course, Danaher did win the 125 title, but it's not the fact that he won, it's how he won. He was doing amazing things. Just because he could control the range, control the distance, because the other guy was just, I'd probably say 2 or 3 seconds slower in every movement.
That's excellent. So as a coach, as a leader, how much attention to detail do you have when you're developing the leaders that you're coaching and mentoring? Thanks a lot, Coach Says. Totally appreciate your time, brother.
It's funny today. Reading a story this morning, Patriots are bad for the NFL. They're just cheaters. It's funny, when I think of New England's brand, I think of details and precision. A former Eagle assistant, Steve Spagnuolo, thinks the Patriots knew their defensive signals in the Super Bowl back in 2004. He was talking about this yesterday.
I remember through the course of the game, Jim saying, they're getting our signals. They know when we're blitzing. They're getting our signals, try to hide it, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember distinctly thinking, Jim, I don't think that's true. Now, I'm not saying this to him because I don't want to upset him, but I'm saying to myself, I don't think so, Jim. Just concentrate on, calling the game. But he, in hindsight, he was right. When you go back and look at that tape, it was evident to us. And I'm not crying over spilt milk here, but we believe that Tom knew when we were pressuring, because he certainly got the ball out pretty quick. But, you got to play the game, and they won that particular day. But there's no question, I wasn't going to let that happen in the 08 Super Bowl after the 07 season. We made sure we had 2 signal callers, and we were protecting against that.
Oh, I can just hear the Patriot haters. That is cheating! By the way, you ever watch a college game, an NFL game? You notice why the signal play caller does this? In every college game and in every NFL game, they call plays like this. Why? Because everybody, baseball, NASCAR, poker, the military, technology, media, sports, it's your job to hide the signals. It's not my job to not take them when you're too stupid to give them to me.
Well, listen, I'm super thrilled to be here. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you being here. I'm thrilled to talk to you.
Thanks.
You're a motivational motherfucker, man. You got a lot of people up and at 'em.
I'm super grateful. You know, it's funny. I spent the 3 years, for last year I've been okay with it, but the 3 years prior to that, I specifically didn't want to be a motivational speaker.
How come?
I was selfish in deciding that I just didn't want to be that I was more proud in my own mind of being an entrepreneur business builder who happened to have entrepreneurial tendencies. And I feel like the motivational speaker thing, by percentages can get a little ugly, gets a little kind of hollow, can get a little spammy. And for my own mind, the way I had it in my brand was I suppressed and stopped putting out the content that I would tell my boys and my internal employees. But for the last year, I embraced it a little more. And so, it's got a place. You can't, and I know you feel this because as soon as you announced it too, I got so many emails and tweets and DMs of the same thing. If you're lucky enough that some way, the way you communicate brings value to others, you need to be smart about that. And so I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you need to be smart about it. You don't want to get greedy with it or stupid with it or.
There's a fine line between manipulation and doing the right thing.
For sure.
And for me, when I go on stage, that is my zone. That's my arena. That's my court. I just don't think anybody does it better.
Like when you give motivational speeches.
Yeah, I mean, they're usually business talks, but I'm so rah that it takes, I feel like I'm a defensive coordinator that's giving you the plays, but I'm going to give it to you we can do this, let's rip their necks, out of their body. And so when I'm up there, that and the YouTube videos and things of that nature, that's the majority of what people see of me. And that's only one version of it. And I'm very conscious of the motivational thing. I think a lot of people use motivation for their own selfishness. And I know it all plays out in 30 or 40 years, but along the way, for my own appetite, I want to balance it the right way.
Well, there's a lot of people that are doing it that they don't really do anything else. I know a guy who does motivational speaking. He used to be a shitty comedian, and now he's just doing these weird motivational speeches, and they're sort of hobbled and cobbled together from other people's shit, and it's fake.
You know what? Listen, I don't judge anybody. Very honestly, I don't give a fuck. Really, I really don't. Really, I don't. But about what other people are doing, entertainment, escapism. There's, people can say reality stars are this. People say watching football, like my beloved Jets, for 3 hours is stupid. People can judge escapism any way they want. Here's my big thing. I'm a businessman, so I talk about business content. It's not just finding your inner peace. What scares the shit out of me is everybody who fucking says that they're, a business coach and they've never made a fucking dollar outside of selling other people how to make a dollar. And that whole scheme is basically sell other people on how to make a dollar.
Yeah.
So I just don't want to go down that path. And I think I can look the part very quickly. And that's why I suppressed it for a little while. But then in the last 3 or 4 years, I've built a very large agency, a media agency. And so I think I felt good that I went and executed again, just like I did when I built the wine business. So I filled that bucket of building another big business, which makes me feel more comfortable to go out and do the content and being out there.
Well, there's definitely value in giving people motivation. There's definitely value that other people get from it. It's a real positive thing, and there's ripples that come off of that. And I feel like I gain a lot from a lot of people that are motivational. I get a lot out of it. I love it when they're real. Yeah. It's hard to find. You got to separate, find out who's who's a real health expert and who's a bullshit artist that is sort of compiled and remembered a bunch of things that other health experts have actually studied and done research on.
Headline reading versus practitionership.
Right.
And I couldn't even imagine what you guys are dealing with. Being at the top of the sphere of this important medium, you must get bombarded, and it takes work. Like, I've been able to navigate who I want to fuck with and have drinks with and who I stay away from.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it does.
Because it can look the part, and you gotta like dig, and then you gotta like take, and you know this, there's people that you actually respect who haven't done the work and are lazy about putting somebody else on, and they're like, yeah, that's a good guy, but they're not.
Yeah.
And they're like, fuck. And like, the whole thing is really interesting, actually.
And then there's hosers. Yeah.
Yes.
You've been doing something so long, you just don't see like tape, you see the depth of everything. How do you know when the guy's gonna blitz? You kind of look at the shape of the defense. A guy just may have a little tell, like a poker player, It's like, oh, how do you know? Well, I don't know, you've been doing it for so long, you've seen so much. I watch tape all day Monday, all day Tuesday. Wednesday we practice, Thursday we practice, Friday we practice, and I come home and I watch film. And then Saturday before the game I watch film. And then Sunday morning I watch film. And the whole time I'm just trying to get tells. I don't know why I can sit here and watch it and, process information quickly, but I can. I could literally, just watch film all day. It's almost like soothing because I've been doing it for so long. I can just go 4 or 5 hours without getting up from this chair.
Now, how many people are recognizing this system and trying to mimic it or trying to find out some sort of a counterattack to it?
That's an interesting question. I'm told there's actually kind of like an industry of people who try to break what we do down and mimic it. I know there's people putting out numerous instructionals. They watch what the squad does and tries to break it down. That's good, and it's natural. I'd be doing the same thing. If someone else is coming out and wrecking people with a given move, I'd be studying what they're doing too. So yeah, there does seem to be an industry of that. The question is, how successful are they? Do you see any other groups of people coming out and just exclusively finishing people with the same moves time and time again for years at a time at all levels of competition?
No, you're seeing more 10th Planet guys do that now. 10th Planet guys have, and given you all the credit in the world, by the way, that they've started transitioning to a lot more leg lock attacks, leg lock defense, concentrating on that.
Yeah, it's what we find is that most people definitely struggle with defending it, and this has been around for quite a while now. It's been 5 years since the squad really started pushing this publicly, and it seems like there's still going to be some. Eventually, people will figure things out. It's just the way progress works. But I think at this point, it's pretty clear that people have changed their minds about leg locks. People, I think, are recognizing that there's something different going on here, that this is a control-based approach to leg locks rather than, a speed and power-based approach to leg locks. And the evidence for its success really comes from the nature of the squad itself. If you look at the three founding members of the squad, Eddie Cummings, Gordon Ryan, and Gary Tonin, all three have very, very different body types. All three have very, very different personalities. And yet all three use a very similar game. Two of those three athletes came from nowhere. They had no competition record before they started training with me at the Hensel Gracie Academy. One of them had a competition record. He was I believe Gary Tonin was a brown belt competitor in the gi, but he had no leg lock game. He was a guy who was essentially known for scrambling from bottom half guard and using rear naked strangles and out of scrambles. Strangles out of scrambles, my God, that was a tongue twister. So Gary Tonin was a particularly interesting case because he came to me as an already developed athlete. He's trained under a very good friend of mine, Tom DeBlas, and completely changed his game. So that showed something very interesting. That showed that someone could already have a developed game and then take on this and change their game. So that was a particularly interesting case. With the case of Eddie Cummings and Gordon Ryan, they came to me early in their development, so they took it on wholesale, as it were.
I think this style and approach, and one of the things that's so fascinating about it is it really requires someone like you to systematically break it down the way you have described it. I've done jiu-jitsu for 20 years, but I never stopped and thought of all the positions in the system, all the steps in the system. Take the fight to the ground, get past the dangerous legs, achieve some sort of a dominant position, go for the submission. I didn't do that. I knew what I was doing.
What I find with most jiu-jitsu players is that they know what they're doing on an unconscious level.
Yes.
My job as a coach is to make it conscious. Okay. Now, for me, the most interesting thing when I first started thinking about jiu-jitsu as a system, okay, I did that when I wrote a book for my sensei Renzo Gracie. He asked me to write a book, and I started thinking deeply about, what is this thing that I study? I spend all day on the mat, so what am I doing exactly? And when you start consciously thinking about, okay, breaking it down into steps, you see Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a step-by-step system. My question was, can I go further than that? If Jiu-Jitsu is a simple, single system, what about if you divided Jiu-Jitsu up into niche areas? And instead of having one overall system, you had an overall system with many subsystems within it. So you had a leg system, a back system, a front headlock system, a kimura system. My approach to Jiu-Jitsu is that I had recognized that much of the success of early Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came from its systematic nature, the fact that it was a systems-based approach to Jiu-Jitsu. And I took various niche areas and created systems within systems. Then things started to get interesting when I started integrating the system so that one subsystem failed, you could transfer to another. That meant that my students could put opponents who had trained much, much longer than they had into a niche area, which my students had so much knowledge of, so much training in that isolated niche domain, that they could take someone who had trained 3-4 times longer than themselves and have more knowledge in that one domain than their much more experienced opponent did. And so what you saw with the squad was incredibly speedy progress, where they were getting wins against people who had trained 2-3 times longer than they had. And this idea of what I call integrated subsystems, instead of having Jiu-Jitsu as just one simple single system, you keep the overall system of Jiu-Jitsu, but you have subsystems within it, each one integrated with the other, so that when one system fails, you can pass off to another and go back and forth until you get the win. That was my approach to Jiu-Jitsu. That's what I want to do. If I can innovate Jiu-Jitsu in any given direction, that's probably the one I would push the most.